Hi guys, so today I'm going to be showing you how you can consume a RESTful API using Java and Spring. Today we're going to be creating a RESTful service client in Java using SpringBoot. So at the moment what I have is a contract service which basically exposes one endpoint at service version 1 contracts / and then the account number, so that's passed in as a path variable. And that just returns as a contract with my name and the contract number we pass in. So the first thing we need to do is go ahead and create a Maven project. So this is what we're going to use for our client. I'm going to use the simple archetype. Go ahead and give it a name. I'm just going to call mine contract client. When that finishes, we want to delete the boilerplate code that's given for us, and we want to open up the POM. The first thing we want to do is change the Java version, Java 1.8. We want to take the SpringBoot starter web dependency. We want to bring over the parent POM of SpringBoot. Then you want to rebuild the application or update Maven, and we should be good to go. So you go ahead and create a class called app, which again is going to be the entry point to our application. And then you want to annotate that with SpringBoot application. And then you want a main method. And you want to start the Spring application inside here. So Spring application.run app.class arguments. We should be good to go. So the first thing we need to do now is create the actual client. So we're going to call it contract client. Create a new package for that. And inside the contract client, we want to annotate this with component. So it's going to be picked up and scanned automatically by SpringBoot. And we want to create one method, a public contract. We'll call it just get contract. We're going to pass in the contract number. So this is where we're going to actually make our call to the service. But as you notice, we don't have the dependency in contract. So for this demo, what I'm going to do is extract out the DTO, which lives in the contract service, into its own dependency. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and create another project. Maven project. Next. Click start yes. And call this contract DTO. Data transfer object. Wait till that completes. Go ahead and delete the boilerplate code. And then we want to bring in the contract class. Make sure all the references have updated. So it's just the name and a contract number. And we want to update our POM in our contract service. So what we want to do is actually reference the contract DTO. So you go ahead and grab the artifact and the group ID and the version and pull that into your contract service into a new dependency. And then we'll also bring that into the client. So now our client and our service have access to the same DTO. And then we can go ahead and delete this class out of the contract service, and then we'll update any references to that. So import contract DTO contract. So we should be good to go now. So now we have access in both our service, our contract DTO, and our client. One thing we can do is change our Maven compiler and the source and target in our contract DTO to be sure we're using Java 1.8 there as well, and remove any unused dependencies. So I'm just going to perform an update on all of the projects. And then go ahead and import the contract. Now we need to actually return a contract. So the first thing I want to do is bring in REST operations. So if I auto wire private REST operations, this is going to give me access to call RESTful APIs. So what I'm going to do is call REST operations.get for object. So you can get for entity, where you can get access to the response entity, which exposes the HTTP status codes and various other pieces of information. But for this demo, we can simply use get for object. We're going to use this method. So we're going to pass in the URL, the class response type we're going to map to, so map that the JSON to, and the URI variable, which again, the URI variable is going to be the dynamic path variable that we pass in. So what we want to do here is create a constructor. And what we want to do is pass in the URL. We're going to assign the URL to a constant we have here. And the response type is going to be the contract.class. And the URI variable is going to be the contract number. So now we actually need to define the URL. But we're going to do that using Spring properties. So in the value, what we're going to do is pass in the URL. So we're going to call this contract service URL. And we're going to auto-wire the constructor. Now what we need to do is actually create the source folder. So if you go in and click source main resources, so everything in here will be automatically added to the class path. We're going to create a new file. So that file is going to be called application.properties. First thing we want to do is give it a server port. So we're going to give it a port of 9000, as we're going to be running 8080 on the other server. And we want to go ahead and go back to our client and take the contract service URL, paste it in here. We're going to say HTTP localhost port 8080, so this is our server. Go into the service, grab that URL, server version 1 contracts, service version 1 contracts, and then the contract number. So this is the dynamic path variable. So now this is going to be automatically wired into our contract client. We're going to be posting for that object and returning that JSON into this. So now what we want to do is actually create our REST template, which is the REST operations implementation from Spring. So if you go ahead and create a configuration class, so we're going to call this RestConfig. We'll put this in the config package. So if you annotate this with configuration, so it's going to be automatically configured using SpringBoot. We want to go ahead and create a bean. Public REST operations. Create REST template. Return new REST template. So it's going to create us the REST template, which will allow us to make post requests and any other HTTP requests. But the thing is, REST template, it does not have a connect and a read timeout. So that's something we definitely want in our services, as we do not want to hang. So what we can do is go ahead and create the connection factory. That'll be the underlying implementation. So this is the client HTTP request factory. So if you go ahead, go in here, and I'm going to grab the name of it, go back, create another bean. What we want to do is actually create two properties, and this is going to be the connect timeout and the read timeout. So value connect.timeout, final string, and we want the value of read timeout. So now we have a read timeout and connect timeout. Well, now we're going to import that client HTTP request factory in, and we're going to go ahead and use Spring's HTTP components client request factory. So if you click new, HTTP components, so there's lots here, so we're going to use the HTTP request factory. So you go ahead and assign that. And then we're going to set the connect and the read timeout. So set the read timeout to read timeout. So they should be integer values. So now it means we're not going to hang if there's something goes wrong. The connection will automatically be died, and we'll throw a REST client exception. So we're going to return our CTP Client factory. And of course, we want to be expecting one of these in here. We're going to assign that into the RestTemplate. And we should be good to go. So now we need to create these properties, read timeout and connect timeout. So the read timeout, we're going to give it 10 seconds. And the connect timeout, 10 seconds again, 10,000 milliseconds. So you stop that, stop your rest config. So that should be the configuration setup. That's our component, which is going to be auto-wired. And now what we want to do is actually run the application. So test this out. So how do we do that? Well, actually in this example, I'm going to actually implement the command line runner. And then so this method's going to be run once the application actually starts. And what I can do here is auto wire in the client. So contract client, auto wired. Sorry for my typing. Contract client. Then I can say contract client dot get contract. And in this example, what we're going to do is we have to find any number we want. So I'm going to pass in 1. And what I'll do is bring in a logger. Let me bring in logger factory. And I'm going to use f4j dot get logger app dot class. And then I'm going to say logger log info response, and then we'll give it the contracts. So now we should now when the application starts, we're going to auto wire application, inject the contract client in. Then we're going to click run, which invokes get contract, passing in 1. It's then going to go ahead and call the contract number, which we passed in 1, in the contract service URL property. So it's going to be service version 1, contracts number 1. And then it's going to map the contract that's returned from the server into our actual client and return that. So let's see if that works first time. If there's any issues, we might need to sort it out. So if you go ahead and run your contract service first. So right click, run as SpringBoot application. So there's the service that started up. And now we want to actually test if our client works. So if you go ahead and right click contract client, run as SpringBoot app. So now we have number format exception, connect, timeout. Okay, let's fix that. So let's look at our properties first of all. Connect timeout, there's 10,000, and that is 10,000. So input number format exception. So let's go back to our client where we've brought them in, so the rest config. Oh, so we need to actually say these are properties. So you need to annotate that with the $mark. And now let's run that again. Hopefully that was the problem. Perfect. So now we need HTTP client. So that's Spring must not bring that dependency in. So what we want to do is go ahead in our contract client, open up your POM, and bring in a new dependency. And what we need is Apache HTTP components. So the group ID is org.apache.http components, and the artifact ID should be HTTP client. So Spring mustn't be bringing that in for us. So now we should have that on our class path. Maven update. And again, now we need to run our app. Let's see how it is this time. Okay, so now you can see response, contract, Philip, contract number 1. So as you can see, we've actually called out to our service and we've returned back, and it's returned back Philip and number 1. So if I go ahead and stop that and change that again to number 2, you're going to see Philip number 2. So that's how easy it is to create a RESTful service or a RESTful service consumer in the Spring. There's nothing hard about it, and you can use that, and you can actually enable all the error handling policies and scenarios you want. So in this example, what I've done is it's a vanilla example. You're just calling out, but I've said read and connect timeouts. But you'd also want to handle certain response codes. So for the sake of it, HTTP 5xx should be recoverable errors, or HTTP 4xx are mostly non-recoverable errors. So if you wanted to do that, what you can do is you can wrap you can see that the get for object in the REST operations, it returns a REST client exception. So if you go ahead and open that up, you'll see it's the nested runtime exception, as are all Spring exceptions. It's great design. And open the type hierarchy, and you should see an HTTP status code exception. And in that status code exception, you should see HTTP client error exception and server error exception. So these are the exceptions thrown when you see a 4xx or a 5xx. So if you wanted to deal with them and propagate them effectively up the call stack, you would want to place your try and catch around this, and then you'd want to propagate the error or handle any error scenarios from there. And of course, this doesn't handle a lot of things like resiliency or async responses. So in this instance, our server is handling everything in the Tomcat main container threads. So typically the pool of 200. You would want to mostly delegate them calls, the client calls, into their own thread pools. So you can use things like Hystrix to actually do that for you. And it also gives you bulk heading and various other really cool things, like even the stream where you can view all the service metrics in real time, which I'll probably show you in another example. But yeah, thanks for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it and learned something. You can create enterprise systems very quickly now using Spring. And as you can see, I only have 3 packages here, and I'm consuming a service, and I only have 2 packages to create a service. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.